When compared to the other gangs of Night City, the Mox is definitely the most morally sound. The gang is based around the protection of vulnerable sex workers and the promotion of their livelihood. It exists in stark contrast to gangs like the Voodoo Boys and especially the Tiger Claws, whose goals are based much more on money and power. This isn't to say that the Mox are altruists by any means. At the end of the day, the Mox are still a criminal gang, albeit a gang who protect the weak from the true scum of the city. Additionally, the Mox are a much more recent addition to the Night City streets, with the gang being founded in 2067, only 10 years before the events of the game. Because of the gang's recency and their more defensive nature, the Mox don't have a large territorial foothold within the city. At most, the gang can be said to control the sub-district of Kabuki, with small, tenuous footholds in Japantown. Additionally, the Mox are one of the only gangs that has an official headquarters, a home base, so to say, at Lizzie's bar, located in the heart of Kabuki. Although this small territory is not necessarily due to a lack of trying on the Mox's part, they are, quite simply, wedged in between much more powerful gangs. To the north of Kabuki is Northside, which is Maelstrom Turf, who are leagues more aggressive and stronger than the Mox. To the east of Kabuki is Westbrook, where the Tiger Claws operate, who are also far more powerful than the Mox, and who the Mox also have bad blood with, which will be elaborated on later. South of Kabuki is downtown, or Corpo Plaza, where no gangs call their home due to fear of Corpo retaliation. Put simply, the Mox hold as much territory as they realistically can, as they are boxed in by larger factions, and they lack the manpower to expand into areas that are unoccupied. And it is because of these reasons that the Mox do not have a large presence in the city. In fact, the only thing that the Mox does in the game that relates to gaining turf or establishing a larger street presence is their attempted takeover at the Doll Club of Clouds. And even that was an unofficial rogue act on V and Judy's behalf. Being a gang in Night City is more than having turf or making moves on the streets. It is also about having a history and fostering a community. The history of the Mox, while recent, is very interesting. On May 13th, 2067, a member of the Tiger Claws gang viciously raped and murdered a prostitute, which is unfortunately all too common in Night City.
Tiger beat one of Lizzie's girls real bad once.
Unknown to the Tiger Claws was that this prostitute, who is unnamed in the game, was under the protection of a woman named Elizabeth Lizzie Borden, a former Joy Toy and owner of the club that would later be named Lizzie's Bar.
Real Lizzie ran a strip joint out of this place back in the day. Lizzie's Bar. Girls were paid right, insured, even had decent security. Good spot, all in all.
On the street, Lizzie's reputation was that she treated her workers fairly and protected them from the more violent clients that hired their services. Upon hearing that the Tiger Claws had killed one of her girls, Lizzie was furious and decided to take matters into her own hands.
No hesitation, Lizzie blasted the guy's balls off. Gang came back the next day. Liz was done.
After killing the 3 Tiger Claws, Lizzie displayed their bodies in front of her bar to act as a warning towards anyone who would attack a Joy Toy on her watch. This mentality is what the Mox embody: protection of Joy Toys and swift vengeance against anyone who would violate them. Unfortunately, this apparent victory was short-lived as the Tiger Claws raided her bar that very night, killing Lizzie and razing the structure to the ground. The Tiger Claws thought that their show of force would be the end of the whole affair, and that the fear of ending up like Lizzie would prevent others, like her, from threatening their authority. But in fact, the opposite happened, as Lizzie's death provoked a series of riots, mainly aimed against the Tiger Claws.
What was it? Something about a riot. Joy Girl murdered by a Tiger Claw?
Not the first, just the one that tipped the scales. Folk went ballistic. Streets overflowed with raised fists. Girls, pimps, outcasts, the whole freak show.
In the aftermath of the riots, the Mox was formed as an official gang. Lizzie's bar was rebuilt and named in her honor, and it became the headquarters of the newly formed gang.
Tigers gave this place up to the Mox in the end, though, didn't they?
Sort of. The Moxes had to make a deal with them. Luckily, they kept their heads, organized quick. Big boss now is Susie Q. But the sign stayed up, out of respect. And biz booms to this day.
And that takes us to 2077. The Mox and our favorite member Judy play a sizable role in V's story in 2077. They are present in several main story missions, as well as Judy's questline. And this is in addition to being in the occasional fixer gig or cyber psycho takedown. Surprisingly, the player's first interaction with the Mox is life path dependent, as they are present in the Corpo life path intro mission, the Corpo Rat. In that mission, V heads to Lizzie's bar in order to meet up with Jackie, as their bar is their usual meeting place for the Corpo V life path. But the bar, as well as the Mox, is not the focus of the mission, and Lizzie's serves as a mere set dressing for V's abrupt departure from the Arasaka Corporation. Still, it gives a player the first taste of the Mox culture, and introduces them to a key location for future missions. Most players' first taste of the Mox comes during the mission The Information, where V meets with Evelyn Parker to discuss the fine details of the biochip heist. The first sight that greets the player upon arriving at Lizzie's is a fan-favorite NPC, none other than Rita Wheeler. If the Mox's visual style has to be understood by looking at a single person, Rita would be the best woman for the job. She is dressed head to toe in cyberwear and dressings that scream the Mox aesthetic. Pink, black, and blue cybernetic arms that have blue spiked bracers attached to them, dyed pink hair, revealing tank top, tight black pants, all are fashion choices that can be seen on both Joy Toys as well as other Mox members. And, of course, let's not forget Rita's signature baseball bat and Mox's chest tattoo. Rita conveys nearly everything the player needs to know about the Mox, as both a people and a gang. They dress loudly and/or skimpy, emulating the people they protect, and they're also ready for action no matter what. As a piece of visual storytelling, Rita Wheeler's design is a tour de force in giving the player the information they need without telling them anything. Show, don't tell. The short dialogue that V can have with Rita also serves to convey to the player who the Mox are. A people who genuinely want you to have a good time, but by their rules on their terms.
Hold it, house rules first. There will be severe penalties for any unauthorized recording. No drugs, no groping.
Someone catch your eye? You do not grab them. You find them in the catalog, ask for a BD, and get yourself a box.
People like Rita have presumably seen enough violence to understand the need for the rules at Lizzie's, and are proud to enforce them on the consumers of their product. Moving into the bar itself, the NPCs inside are not dressed quite as loudly as Rita Wheeler. Most of them are, after all, clientele of the Mox and not their members. Still, there is an ever-present sense of spunk and style to the patrons of Lizzie's, a sense of style that the player will grow ever more familiar with as the game's plot progresses. But, of course, V is here on a mission. They need information, and Evelyn Parker is the source of said information. A quick side note here, while it is easy to assume that Parker is another one of the Mox's members, the game never makes it clear what faction or gang Evelyn belongs to. On one hand, she works as a doll at Clouds, which is under Tiger Claw control, and they would not take too kindly to having an active Mox member operating within their walls. On the other hand, Evelyn is the exact type of person the Mox seeks to protect, a doll in dangerous circumstances, and she is best friends, and potentially former lovers, with Mox member Judy Alvarez. Not to mention her presence at Lizzie's, potentially suggesting a familiarity with the place.
Evelyn jumped the Mox ship a long time ago. And anyone not a Mox is not my damn problem.
Either way you slice it, in the context of the biochip heist, Parker acts as more of a freelancer, a client simply meeting with her merc at a BD club. Shifting focus back to the Mox, the information also acts as the introduction to one Judy Alvarez, the main BD editor for the Mox and a trusted confidant of Evelyn Parker. I know that many video essays about Cyberpunk quickly derail when Judy's character is brought up. I mean, who can blame them? She is one of the best characters in the game. But this video is about the Mox, so talk of Judy will be relegated to her involvement with the gang, as well as her attempted takeover of Clouds. Back to the information. Judy is the Mox's main BD editor, meaning she takes raw recorded footage from a brain dance and turns it into a more palatable experience. BD sales are implied to be a source of income for the Mox, and since the Mox are allied with a good chunk of sex workers in Night City, it makes sense that they'd help with the distribution and sales of BDs. Although, as I'm sure we all know from the mission where Judy and V rescue Evelyn, there is quite the market for XBDs that are in no way sanctioned by the Mox.
Pleasure doing biz with you.
The XBD market in Night City also gives us a glimpse into another implied role the Mox plays in Night City, a sort of regulatory body for explicit activity. It's well known that the Night City government doesn't really give a shit about the common everyday people that live within its borders, even less so when it comes to sex workers on the bottom of the societal totem pole. This apathy extends doubly so for corpos, who wouldn't lift a finger to help someone who isn't paying them, meaning that most likely there really is no official form of legal protection and or regulation for Joy Toys and XBD actors in Night City. This vacuum created the very problem that led to the Mox's creation, and the gang has, at least in part, managed to fill the void that was left by an absence of official regulation. So, in this sense, the Mox can almost be thought of as a sort of workers' union, and the BDs that editors like Judy spin out can be thought of as union-approved products. But V isn't at Lizzie's to edit XBDs. Instead, they're there to examine a BD scrolled by Evelyn in the Konpeki Plaza penthouse. After a lengthy, albeit skippable, braindance tutorial, V departs Judy's BD den, and then the Lizzie's bar altogether. After this mission, the Mox's role in the main story is far less significant. V only returns to Lizzie's one other time, where they talk with Judy about finding where Evelyn Parker is after the events of the biochip heist. The search for Evelyn Parker is one of the main events of Cyberpunk's story, and Judy is with V for the vast majority of it. And I would like to take this time to very quickly talk about what I consider to be a rather large missed opportunity in the game's story, revolving around Evelyn, the Mox, and Clouds. After the disaster that was the Konpeki Plaza heist, Evelyn decided that it was best to keep her head down and try to not get arrested or killed for her involvement in the heist. So she returned to Clouds as a doll, since that was where she worked, but as she was working there, the Voodoo Boys launched a cyber attack on Evelyn as revenge for going against their deal, and stealing the biochip that they wanted to use for their own purposes. Evelyn was, for the lack of a better word, completely decommissioned by the attack, and Woodman, the manager of Clouds, attempted to try and fix Evelyn and repair the damage. But Woodman's idea of helping someone recover from a cyber attack is to have his way with her for 4 days, raping her while she could not defend herself from him, before handing her off to an equally disgusting Ripperdoc, who could not repair the damage that Woodman in many ways exacerbated. Fingers the Ripperdoc then sold Evelyn off to XPD producing scavs, where V and Judy would then find her in a hellish scav compound, where she was forced to do unspeakable acts for a pitiless, odious, and immoral audience. Evelyn was treated like a slave, treated in a way no human should be, subject to abject misery, and, in the end, It was simply too much for her to bear. In many ways, Evelyn's tragic death mirrors the death of Lizzie Borden, as well as the death of that unnamed Joy Toy who Lizzie avenged. And the subsequent hostile takeover of Clouds mirrors the riots that formed the Mox to begin with. In both cases, the needless death of a sex worker inspired change, inspired action to be taken to ensure that such needless and brutal deaths do not occur again. In both cases, the Tiger Claws are the ones that need to be fought, as they killed Lizzie Borden in 2067 and they owned Clouds in 2077, with one Oswald Forrest, aka Woodman, at the helm of it and on their payroll. The missed opportunity here regarding the Mox as a faction is that they are in no way involved with Judy's planned takeover of Clouds. The game consistently frames the takeover as a doll revolution, so to speak, where they will be fully independent from the Tiger Claws, and presumably any other gangs, which would exclude the Mox. It's hard to tell where the line between Judy's naivete ends and the dev's oversight begins. But what I can say from a thematic perspective, as well as a purely logical one, is that it makes no sense that the Mox would not even be remotely involved with the Clouds takeover. In the call in which Judy proposes the idea to V, she mentions the Mox in Lizzie's bar as an inspiration for her actions. But later in the call, she flat out denies that she wants the Mox to take over Clouds, which is a rather confusing choice from Judy's perspective.
The Mox died. Lizzie's bar used to be a joy house. Tiger Claws killed one girl too many, so people took matters into their own hands. Belongs to us now. Clouds could stand to get the same makeover.
Sure you've thought this through, Judy? Carefully.
Haven't thought it through at all. All I know is the Mox didn't turn things around by sitting on their tanned and toned asses doing nothing.
Got the Mox to agree to take over Clouds.
No, I'm trying to get you. Know someone at Clouds who'll take our side.
Maybe the Mox don't have the manpower to do it, which makes sense given their small size. Maybe they don't want to risk open war with the Tiger Claws, which again, makes sense. But at the very least, it would have made more sense for the Mox to have played any role in the Clouds arc of the story. Even if their part would have been refusing open support, it would have been better than total absence. I mean, who doesn't want to see an armed sex worker revolution in a story arc about a sex worker revolution? Either way you cut it, the Mox being nowhere to be seen is a pretty big missed opportunity from CDPR.
Where was
The Mox and Clouds.
fell?
In the end, the Mox aren't involved in the Clouds takeover in any degree, and we all know how that turned out. Depending on certain story choices V makes, the Tiger Claws either launch a brutal counterattack against Clouds, or nothing really changes thanks to Maiko being in charge. Mox involvement in the main story and main side quests ends here, but they are present in a couple of side quests and gigs, as well as some random events across the city. Documenting each and every cross-reference and data shard that the Mox have in the city would blow this video out of proportion. So for conciseness, I'm going to focus on the two gigs that the Mox are involved in the most: Monster Hunt and Occupational Hazard. Monster Hunt is a Watson-based gig given to V by Regina Jones, and it's arguably one of the most iconic fixer gigs in the game. It has V taking out a notorious Tiger Claw boss named Jotaro Shobo on behalf of the Mox. Jotaro is an infamous figure in the Night City crime world, as he is most known for scrolling horrendous XPDs that involve the murder and torture of hired sex workers, or even victims of human trafficking.
Have you ever heard of Jotaro Shobo? He's one of the T-Claws.
Yeah, I've heard. A fucking psycho. Likes to hurt people.
The Mox have him on their blacklist. Some girls marked him for death.
That's all pudding, honey. But so what? Assholes like Shobu have been on my blacklist before I heard of him.
The Mox blacklist is more powerful. It actually means something.
I'll believe it when I see his rotting, stinking corpse.
Amen to that.
There are various videos that go into greater depth about the crimes of Jotaro Shobo, but for this gig's purposes, he is marked for death because of his routine torture of Joy Toys. What's interesting about this gig is that it's the Mox who contact Regina with the job, who in turn hires V. The fact that the Mox cannot go after Jotaro themselves goes further to illustrate the fact that they lack the heavy-duty manpower to engage in inter-gang warfare, even on their home turf in Kabuki. So they resort to hiring a freelancer like V to get the job done for them. Completion of the gig sees Jotaro dead, the Mox happy, and the Joy Toys of Night City resting easier, knowing that the monster is now dead.
Jotaro received. The Mox will gladly take him off my hands, give him a taste of his own meds. Thanks. Gig shut.
Occupational Hazard is another Watson-based gig given to V by Regina. The gig is pretty straightforward. There is a Mox gang member named Anna Knox who has gone cyberpsycho during a BD tuning session gone wrong. V is contracted to take her down, as well as rescue a man named Hal Cantos from the same place, who was the man running the braindance tuning session. What's interesting about Knox is that she, in fact, can be met as a guard at Lizzie's before the events of the gig, decked out in her Mox-themed gear and cyberware, the very same cyberware that helped contribute to her case of cyberpsychosis. After a relatively easy boss fight, which can be made even easier by taking the advice of a dying Mox on the premises, hacking Anna's subnet to be specific, the mission will be completed and Hal will be saved.
You know when you open your eyes in the morning and think, this is gonna be a shitty day? That nothing will go the way it should? Well, this was one of those days. Wished I just stayed in bed.
That is about it for the Mox's presence in the side gigs, and they both involve V having to do a job that the Mox do not have the manpower to do themselves. So, there we have it for the Mox, a plucky gang of unionized sex workers hemmed in by bigger and stronger gangs, too weak to fight rivals on open turf, protecting the weak Joy Toys of the city, not out of a grand plan of altruism, but out of necessity. At the same time, the Mox are arguably the most likable gang in Night City, as well as the most underutilized in the game. But at the end of the day, the Mox fill an important role in Night City, a gang that isn't just all about death, violence, territory conquering, narcotics. The Mox instead represent a gang with a purpose that is, well, rather noble, protecting the downtrodden people of Night City, the most vulnerable groups of Joy Toys and BD artists.